The woman stumbling off the stagecoach in Oroville, California, looked like she had been running from something for a very long time. And Gabriel Irwin could see it in the way her eyes darted across the dusty Main Street before her shoulders sagged with exhaustion. It was the summer of 1878, and the gold rush had long since faded, leaving Oroville a quiet town of ranchers and farmers trying to make something of the land. Gabriel had come into town for supplies, his wagon parked outside the general store, when he noticed her. She wore a faded blue dress that had seen better days, and she clutched a small carpetbag like it contained everything she owned in this world. Her dark blonde hair was coming loose from its pins, and there was a bruise on her cheek that she tried to hide by turning her face away from the curious onlookers. Gabriel was not the type to pry into other people's business. He had learned long ago that everyone carried their own burdens, and sometimes the kindest thing you could do was give them space. But something about the way this woman stood there, looking lost and afraid, made him pause before climbing back onto his wagon. She took a few steps toward the hotel, then stopped. Her hand went to her pocket and he saw her face fall. No money, he guessed. That was a familiar story out here. "Madam," he called out, keeping his voice gentle, "are you looking for work?" She turned to him with wide eyes, the color of storm clouds over the mountains. For a moment she looked like she might bolt, but then her chin lifted with a dignity that spoke of pride not yet broken. "I might be," she said carefully. Her voice was soft but steady. Gabriel nodded toward his wagon. "I run a ranch about 5 miles out of town. My housekeeper left last month to be with her daughter in Sacramento. I could use someone to help with the cooking and cleaning. It's honest work and the pay is fair. Room and board included." The woman studied him for a long moment, and Gabriel understood her hesitation. A young woman, alone, going to a stranger's ranch. It was not a decision to be made lightly. "There's a bunkhouse on the property where 2 of my ranch hands stay," he added. "You would have your own room in the main house with a lock on the door, and I go into town every Sunday for church. You could come along, talk to anyone you like about my character." "Why are you offering this?" she asked. Gabriel considered the question. "Because you look like someone who needs a fresh start and I need the help. Seems like it might work out for both of us." She bit her lip, clearly weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. "My name is Beatrice Riley. I can cook and clean and I work hard. Gabriel Irwin. Most folks call me Gabe." He climbed down from the wagon and extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she shook it. Her hand was small in his, but her grip was firm. Gabriel helped her up onto the wagon seat and loaded the supplies into the back. As they rode out of town, Beatrice sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She watched the landscape roll by with an expression he could not quite read. The ranch came into view as they crested a small hill. It was not much, but Gabriel had built it with his own 2 hands over the past 6 years. The house was modest but well-maintained, painted white with a wide porch that caught the evening breeze. The barn stood solid and red behind it, with corrals stretching out to the pastures where his cattle grazed. 2 smaller buildings served as the bunkhouse and storage. "It is nice," Beatrice said softly, and Gabriel heard the surprise in her voice. "I will show you around," he said as he pulled the wagon to a stop. "Then you can decide if you want to stay." He introduced her to his ranch hands, Tom and young Pete, who were mending a fence near the barn. They tipped their hats respectfully and went back to their work. Then he showed her the house. It was clean but clearly lacked a woman's touch. The kitchen was functional, the sitting room sparse, and the bedrooms plain. "This would be your room," Gabriel said, opening a door off the kitchen. It was small but had a window that looked out over the garden he had been trying to maintain. "The lock is here, and I have the only other key, which I will give to you." Beatrice set her carpetbag down on the bed and turned to face him. In the light from the window, he could see that bruise more clearly, and anger stirred in his chest at whoever had put it there. "I will take the position," she said. "Thank you, Mr. Irwin." "Gabe," he corrected. "We are not formal out here." "Gabe," she repeated, and the smallest hint of a smile touched her lips. Over the next few weeks, Beatrice settled into life on the ranch. She was a woman of few words, but she worked harder than anyone Gabriel had ever known. The house transformed under her care. Curtains appeared in the windows, and the smell of fresh bread filled the kitchen every morning. She cooked meals that made Tom and young Pete practically weep with gratitude after months of Gabriel's basic fare. But Gabriel noticed other things too. The way she flinched at sudden movements. How she always positioned herself so she could see the doors. The nightmares that sometimes woke her, muffled crying that drifted through the walls in the dark hours before dawn. He did not ask. He had promised her a fresh start, and that meant letting her past stay buried unless she chose to dig it up. August turned to September, and the days grew slightly cooler. Gabriel found himself looking forward to meals more than he should, not because of the food, though it was excellent, but because of the quiet company. Beatrice was starting to relax around him, her smiles coming more easily. She had a sharp wit that surprised him, and occasionally, when something amused her, her laugh rang out bright and clear. One evening, after Tom and young Pete had returned to the bunkhouse, Gabriel and Beatrice sat on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains. It had become an unspoken routine, these quiet moments at the end of the day. "Why did you come to California?" Gabriel asked. He had been curious for weeks but had not wanted to push. Beatrice was silent for so long he thought she would not answer. Then she said, "I was running away." "From what?" "From a man who thought he owned me." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "I was married once. My husband was not a good man. He drank, and when he drank, he got mean. One night he got mean enough that I knew if I stayed, he would kill me. So I waited until he passed out, took what little money I had saved, and left. I have been moving from town to town ever since, trying to put enough distance between us." Gabriel felt his jaw tighten. "Is he looking for you?" "I do not know. Maybe. He is proud, and he does not like losing things he thinks belong to him." She turned to look at Gabriel. "That is why I was nervous when you offered me work. I have learned that kindness from men often comes with a price." "Not from me," Gabriel said firmly. "You are safe here, Beatrice. I give you my word on that." She studied his face in the fading light. "I think I believe you," she said quietly. "That scares me almost as much as not believing you." Gabriel understood. Trust was a fragile thing when it had been broken too many times. The harvest season arrived, bringing long days of hard work. Gabriel hired extra hands to help bring in the hay and prepare the ranch for winter. Beatrice fed them all, somehow managing to produce meals for a dozen men without complaint. Gabriel watched her move through the kitchen with quiet efficiency, and something in his chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with hard work. He was falling in love with her. The realization hit him one morning as he watched her hang laundry on the line, humming softly to herself. The bruise had long since faded from her cheek, and there was color in her face now, a healthiness that came from regular meals and feeling safe. She laughed more often, and sometimes Gabriel caught her watching him with an expression he did not dare interpret, but he kept his feelings to himself. Beatrice had been through enough without him adding the pressure of his affection. She needed time to heal, to learn to trust again. He could wait. October brought news that changed everything. Gabriel was in town picking up supplies when the shopkeeper mentioned that a man had been asking questions. Tall, dark-haired, with a mean look about him. He wanted to know if anyone had seen a woman matching Beatrice's description. Gabriel's blood ran cold. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing," the shopkeeper said. "I do not like the look of men who go around searching for women like that, but I thought you should know. He is staying at the hotel." Gabriel finished his business quickly and headed back to the ranch. His mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Beatrice's husband had found her, or was close to it. What would she do? Would she run again? When he arrived home, he found Beatrice in the garden, harvesting the last of the vegetables before the first frost. She looked up at his approach and immediately sensed something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked, standing. Gabriel helped her carry the basket of vegetables inside before answering. In the privacy of the kitchen, he told her what he had learned. The color drained from Beatrice's face. "He found me," she whispered. "I have to leave tonight, before he comes here." "No," Gabriel said. "You do not understand. He will hurt anyone who gets in his way. I will not let you get caught up in this. Beatrice, listen to me." Gabriel took her hands in his, making her look at him. "You do not have to run anymore. This is your home now. I will not let him take you." "You cannot stop him," she said, and there was desperation in her voice. "You do not know what he is like. Then tell me everything." So she did. The story came out in broken pieces, painful and raw. Her husband's name was Bernard Hayes. She had married him at 18, thinking she was in love. But he had changed after the wedding, or perhaps he had always been that way and she had been too young to see it. The drinking, the violence, the isolation. He had moved them away from her family, cut her off from friends. For 3 years she had endured it, believing she had no choice. "I finally realized he was going to kill me," she said. "There was a look in his eyes that night after he hit me, like he wanted to do it, like he was thinking about it, so I ran." "That makes you brave," Gabriel said. "It makes me a coward. A good wife would have stayed." "No," Gabriel said firmly. "A good wife would do exactly what you did. You survived Beatrice. There is no shame in that." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I thought I would be free when I left him, but he is never going to stop looking for me. I will spend the rest of my life running. Not if you have someone standing with you." Gabriel gently wiped the tears from her face. "Let me help you. Let me be the one who faces him." "Why would you do that? I am just your housekeeper." "You are more than that, and you know it." Gabriel took a breath. "I care about you, Beatrice. More than I should, probably, but I am not asking for anything in return. I just want you to be safe and happy. If that means standing between you and the man who hurt you, then that is what I will do." Beatrice shook her head. "I cannot ask that of you." "You are not asking. I am offering." They stayed up late into the night, making plans. Gabriel sent Tom into town the next morning with instructions to keep an eye out for Bernard Hayes and report back. He returned at midday with troubling news. Hayes had been asking around about Gabriel's ranch, and someone had mentioned he employed a woman fitting Beatrice's description. "He will come here," Beatrice said. She had been pacing the kitchen all morning, unable to sit still. "Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, but he will come." Gabriel loaded his rifle and set it by the front door. He sent young Pete to the neighboring ranch to fetch the sheriff, asking him to come as soon as possible. Then there was nothing to do but wait. Bernard Hayes arrived just before sunset. Gabriel heard the horse before he saw it, and he stepped out onto the porch with his rifle in hand. Tom and young Pete stood nearby, armed and ready. Beatrice remained inside, though Gabriel knew she was watching from the window. The man who rode up to the house was indeed tall and dark-haired, with the kind of handsome face that could be charming when it wanted to be. But Gabriel saw the cruelty in his eyes, the set of his mouth that spoke of entitlement and rage barely contained. "You must be Gabriel Irwin," Hayes said, not bothering to dismount. "I hear my wife is here." "I do not know what you are talking about," Gabriel said calmly. "Do not play games with me. I know she is here. I have been tracking her for months, and this is where the trail ends." Hayes leaned forward in his saddle. "Send her out. This is between me and her. You do not want to get involved. If you are talking about Miss Riley, she is under my protection, and she is not going anywhere with you." Hayes's expression darkened. "She is my wife. She belongs to me." "She belongs to herself," Gabriel said, "and from what I understand, she left you for good reason. She is a liar. Whatever she told you, she is lying. I believe her." Hayes dismounted in one smooth motion, his hand moving toward the gun at his hip. But before he could draw, Tom and young Pete raised their rifles. Hayes froze. "You are outnumbered," Gabriel said quietly. "And the sheriff is on his way. I suggest you get back on your horse and leave." "This is not over," Hayes said, his voice tight with fury. "She is my wife under the law. I have the right to take her." "Not in California," said a new voice. The sheriff had arrived along with 2 deputies. "California law says a woman can seek separation on grounds of cruelty, and from what I hear, you have been pursuing a woman who made it clear she wants nothing to do with you. That is harassment, and I can arrest you for it." Hayes looked around at the men surrounding him. He was beaten and he knew it, but the rage in his eyes promised this was not finished. "Fine," he said. "I will go, but you tell that lying woman that she is still my wife. This is not over." "Actually, it is," the sheriff said. "I took the liberty of checking into your situation, Mr. Hayes. Your wife filed for legal separation 3 months ago in Sacramento. The paperwork was just finalized last week. You are no longer married. If you continue to pursue her, I will have you arrested." "Am I clear?" Gabriel saw the shock on Hayes's face, quickly followed by rage. For a moment he thought the man might do something foolish. But Hayes was a bully, and bullies were cowards at heart. He climbed back onto his horse. "She is not worth it anyway," he said viciously. "She is a terrible wife and a worse woman. You are welcome to her." He rode off, and they watched until he disappeared from sight. "Is he really gone?" Beatrice asked from the doorway. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "He is gone," the sheriff confirmed. "And legally, he has no claim on you anymore. The separation was filed by a woman named Beatrice Hayes in Sacramento. That is you, I assume?" "Yes," Beatrice said. "I filed it before I left Sacramento. I did not know if it would go through, but a woman at the church helped me with the paperwork." "Well, it went through. You are a free woman, Miss Riley." Beatrice's legs seemed to give out, and Gabriel was there to catch her. She clung to him, and he felt her body shake with sobs. But these were different tears than before. These were the tears of someone who had been carrying an impossible weight and finally set it down. The sheriff and his deputies stayed for dinner, and the conversation was light. By the time they left, full darkness had fallen. Tom and young Pete returned to the bunkhouse, leaving Gabriel and Beatrice alone. They sat on the porch in the darkness, the stars bright overhead. "I cannot believe it is really over," Beatrice said softly. "You believe it now, that you are safe. I am starting to." She turned to look at him. "Thank you for standing with me today. You could have just let me go, let me run again. It would have been easier for you." "Easier is not always better," Gabriel said. "And I meant what I said earlier. You mean something to me, Beatrice." "I heard you say that to Bernard, that you care about me." She paused. "Did you mean it? Every word?" "I do not know if I can be what you want," she said quietly. "My marriage broke something in me. I do not know if I know how to trust, how to love someone the right way." "Then we will figure it out together," Gabriel said. "No pressure, no expectations. Just 2 people learning to be happy." Beatrice reached out and took his hand. Her fingers interlaced with his, and they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the crickets sing in the grass. The weeks that followed were peaceful. Beatrice seemed lighter, as if a shadow had been lifted from her shoulders. She smiled more often, laughed freely, and slowly, carefully, she began to let Gabriel into her heart. It started with small things. A hand on his arm as she passed him his coffee. Sitting closer to him on the porch. The way her eyes would seek him out across a room. Gabriel reciprocated carefully, never pushing, always letting her set the pace. One evening in late November, as the first real cold snap hit the valley, they were sitting by the fire in the front room. Beatrice was mending one of Gabriel's shirts, and he was reading a week-old newspaper from Sacramento. "Gabe," she said suddenly, "can I ask you something? Anything? Why have you never married? You are a good man with a good ranch. Surely women have shown interest." Gabriel set down his newspaper. "I guess I was waiting for the right one. My parents had a good marriage, full of love and respect. I did not want to settle for less than that. And now I think I have found what I was waiting for." He looked at her directly. "But I do not want to rush you, Beatrice. We have all the time in the world." She set down her mending. "What if I told you I do not want to wait?" Gabriel's heart began to beat faster. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I have been afraid for so long. Afraid to trust, afraid to hope, afraid to believe that something good could happen to me. But you have been patient and kind, and you have never asked for anything in return. And I realized something tonight. I am falling in love with you, and that terrifies me." Gabriel moved to sit beside her on the sofa. "Why does it terrify you? Because what if I am wrong? What if I am damaged beyond repair? What if I cannot be the woman you deserve? Beatrice, look at me." He waited until her eyes met his. "You are already everything I want. You are strong and brave and beautiful. What happened to you before was not your fault. It does not define you." "I am scared to hope," she confessed, and her voice broke. "I am scared to believe this is real." Gabriel took her face gently in his hands. "Then let me hope enough for both of us." He kissed her then, soft and careful, giving her every chance to pull away. But she did not pull away. Instead, she leaned into him, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. The kiss deepened, and Gabriel felt something shift between them, a door opening that could not be closed again. When they finally broke apart, Beatrice was crying, but she was also smiling. "I love you," she whispered. "I think I have loved you since the day you offered me a job without knowing anything about me. You gave me hope when I had none left." "I love you too," Gabriel said. "I have been in love with you for months. I just did not want to say it until you were ready to hear it." They sat together by the fire until it burned down to embers, talking about everything and nothing. Gabriel told her about his childhood on a small farm in Ohio, how he had come west after his parents died to start fresh. Beatrice shared memories of her own childhood, happy times before her marriage. They talked about their dreams for the future, careful and tentative at first, then with growing confidence. "I want to marry you," Gabriel said as the clock struck midnight. "Not now, not until you are ready, but someday when you feel safe enough to take that step again. I want you to be my wife." "I want that too," Beatrice said. "I never thought I would want to marry again, but this feels different. You feel different." "We will do this right," Gabriel promised. "Courting and calling and all the proper steps. I want everyone to know how much I respect you." Beatrice laughed, a sound of pure joy. "We live in the same house, Gabe. I think we have moved past proper." "Then we will make our own proper," he said, grinning. Winter settled over the ranch, bringing cold nights and occasional snow. Gabriel and Beatrice's relationship deepened during those quiet months. They were careful about appearances, mindful of Beatrice's reputation. Tom and young Pete were discreet, but Gabriel knew the whole town would soon know that he was courting his housekeeper. He did not care what people thought, but he cared about Beatrice's comfort. So he made a point of taking her to church every Sunday, introducing her to the townspeople, making sure everyone understood his intentions were honorable. Most people were kind. A few were judgmental, particularly some of the older women who thought it improper for a young woman to be living on a ranch with unmarried men. But Beatrice held her head high, and Gabriel stood beside her, making it clear he would not tolerate gossip or rudeness toward the woman he loved. Christmas came, and Gabriel gave Beatrice a delicate gold locket that had belonged to his mother. Inside, he had placed a small photograph of himself, one taken in town the previous month. "So you will always have me close," he said as he fastened it around her neck. Beatrice gave him a thick wool scarf she had knitted in secret, working on it late at night after he had gone to bed. "So you will stay warm when you are out working in the cold." They exchanged other gifts with Tom and young Pete, then shared a meal that Beatrice had spent days preparing. It was the best Christmas Gabriel had known in years, full of warmth and laughter and love. As they sat by the fire that evening, Beatrice turned to Gabriel. "I am ready," she said. "Ready for what? To marry you. I do not want to wait any more. I do not need more time to be sure. I am sure now." Gabriel pulled her close. "Are you certain? There is no rush." "I am certain. I want to start my life with you, our life together." They were married in March of 1879 in the small church in Oroville. The whole town turned out for the wedding, curious to see the rancher marry his housekeeper. Beatrice wore a simple dress of pale blue, and Gabriel wore his best suit. Tom and young Pete stood up with him, and the shopkeeper's wife stood up with Beatrice. The ceremony was short but meaningful. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Gabriel kissed Beatrice with all the love in his heart, and he heard someone in the congregation sigh with happiness. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch. Neighbors brought food and drink, and someone produced a fiddle. They danced in the yard as the sun set, and Gabriel held Beatrice close, marveling that this beautiful, strong woman was now his wife. "Are you happy?" he asked as they swayed to the music. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she said. "You saved me, Gabe." "No," he said. "You saved yourself. I just gave you a safe place to land." That night, after the guests had left and the ranch was quiet, Gabriel carried Beatrice over the threshold of their home. She laughed at the tradition, but her eyes were bright with joy. Their wedding night was tender and sweet. Gabriel took his time, learning what made Beatrice sigh with pleasure, showing her that intimacy could be gentle and loving. She cried afterward, but they were happy tears. "I never knew it could be like this," she whispered against his chest. "I never knew love could feel this way." "This is how it is supposed to be," Gabriel said, stroking her hair. "This is what marriage should be, partners, equals, choosing each other every day." The first year of their marriage was one of adjustment and joy. Beatrice thrived as the mistress of the ranch, taking charge of not just the house, but helping Gabriel with the business side of things. She had a sharp mind for numbers, and together they made plans to expand the herd and improve the property. Summer brought long days of work, but also evenings spent on the porch watching the sunset. Fall brought the harvest and preparations for winter, and winter brought the news that Beatrice was expecting their first child. "Are you frightened?" Gabriel asked when she told him. He knew that childbirth was dangerous, that many women did not survive it. "A little," Beatrice admitted. "But mostly I am excited. I want this baby, Gabe. I want our family." "I will take care of you," he promised. "Both of you." The pregnancy was difficult at times. Beatrice suffered from morning sickness that lasted well into her 4th month. But Gabriel was patient, bringing her crackers and tea, sitting with her when she felt ill. As her belly grew, he marveled at the life they had created together. In May of 1880, after a long labor that left Gabriel pacing holes in the floor, Beatrice gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Thomas Gabriel after Tom and Gabriel himself. Holding his son for the first time, Gabriel felt his eyes fill with tears. "He is perfect," he whispered. "He is ours," Beatrice said, exhausted but glowing with happiness. "Our little family." Thomas was a good baby, calm and content. Beatrice adapted to motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything else. Gabriel helped when he could, walking the floor with Thomas when he fussed, changing diapers, doing whatever Beatrice needed. Tom and young Pete became unofficial uncles, doting on the baby whenever they got the chance. The ranch prospered, and life settled into a comfortable rhythm. When Thomas was 6 months old, a letter arrived that changed everything. It was from a lawyer in Sacramento, informing Beatrice that Bernard Hayes had died. He had been killed in a bar fight, drunk and belligerent, picking a fight with the wrong man. Beatrice read the letter twice, then set it down on the kitchen table. "How do you feel?" Gabriel asked carefully. "Relieved," she said after a moment. "Is that terrible? I know I should feel something more, but all I feel is relief. He cannot hurt me anymore. He cannot find us. He is truly gone." "That is not terrible," Gabriel assured her. "He made your life hell for years. You are allowed to feel relief." Beatrice picked up Thomas, holding him close. "I do not want him to know about any of that. When he is old enough to understand, I will tell him the truth. But I want him to grow up knowing only love, only safety." "He will," Gabriel promised. "We will make sure of it." The years passed in a blur of work and love and family. Thomas grew into a curious, energetic toddler, then a bright, kind little boy. When he was 3, Beatrice became pregnant again, and this time she gave birth to a daughter they named Grace Rose. Grace had her mother's storm gray eyes and her father's dark hair. She was a sweet baby, and Thomas adored his little sister, always wanting to help care for her. Gabriel expanded the ranch, buying adjacent land and increasing the herd. Beatrice took over the ranch's finances completely, proving to have a better head for business than Gabriel himself. Together, they made the Irwin Ranch one of the most successful in the county. But more than success, they built a life full of love. Gabriel never stopped courting his wife, bringing her wildflowers from the fields, stealing kisses in the kitchen, telling her every day how much he loved her. Beatrice bloomed under his love, becoming more confident and joyful with each passing year. They fought sometimes, as all couples do. But they fought fair, never going to bed angry, always talking through their problems. Gabriel never raised his voice or his hand to her, and Beatrice learned to trust that his love was constant and true. One evening, when Thomas was 8 and Grace was 5, Gabriel found Beatrice sitting on the porch steps watching their children play in the yard. He sat down beside her and took her hand. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How lucky I am," she said. "Sometimes I think about that day I arrived in Oroville, so scared and lost. I had no idea that getting off that stagecoach would lead me here to this life, to you and our children. If someone had told me then that I would be this happy, I would not have believed them." "I am the lucky one," Gabriel said. "You made my house a home. You gave me a family. You made me happier than I ever dreamed possible." "We made each other happy," Beatrice corrected. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You gave me hope when I had none. You loved me when I did not know how to love myself. You were patient and kind and true. You are still all those things. And I always will be," Gabriel promised. They sat together as the sun set, watching their children play, content in the life they had built together. Thomas was teaching Grace how to skip stones in the water trough, and her delighted laughter rang out across the yard. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had not stopped that day?" Gabriel asked. "If I had just driven past?" "No," Beatrice said. "Because I think we were meant to find each other. I think the universe knew we needed each other, and it brought us together at exactly the right time." "You believe in fate?" Gabriel asked, surprised. "I believe in us," Beatrice said. "And I believe that sometimes when we are brave enough to accept help, miracles happen." Gabriel kissed the top of her head. "You were always brave. You just needed someone to remind you." As darkness fell, they called the children inside. The family gathered around the dinner table, sharing the meal Beatrice had prepared. Thomas told long stories about his day, full of dramatic details and wild exaggerations that made everyone laugh. Grace insisted on saying the blessing, her small voice serious as she thanked God for her family. After dinner, they moved to the sitting room. Gabriel read aloud from a book of adventures while Beatrice worked on her knitting, and the children played quietly on the rug. It was an ordinary evening, like hundreds of others they had shared. But it was also extraordinary in its simple perfection. Later, after the children were tucked into bed, Gabriel and Beatrice stood together in their bedroom. The house was quiet around them, peaceful. "I love you," Gabriel said, as he did every night. "I love you too," Beatrice replied, as she always did. But then she added, "Thank you for hoping for me when I could not hope for myself. Thank you for being the man you are." Gabriel pulled her close. "Thank you for letting me love you. Thank you for building this life with me." They held each other in the darkness. Two people who had found each other against all odds, who had chosen love over fear, hope over despair. The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges as all years do. There were hard winters and dry summers. There were cattle that got sick and crops that failed. There were injuries and illnesses and the normal struggles of ranch life. But through it all, Gabriel and Beatrice stood together, facing each challenge as partners. Their love deepened with time, becoming something rich and complex and unshakable. Thomas grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's quick mind and kind heart. He took to ranching naturally, learning everything Gabriel could teach him. Grace grew into a spirited young woman, beautiful and intelligent, with a passion for teaching that eventually led her to become the schoolteacher in Oroville. As Gabriel and Beatrice grew older, they added a wing to the house to accommodate their expanding family. Thomas married a sweet woman named Sarah, and they gave Gabriel and Beatrice 3 grandchildren. Grace found love with a young lawyer from Sacramento, and they had 2 children of their own. The ranch house that had once been so quiet was now full of life and laughter. Sunday dinners brought everyone together, the table crowded with family, the air filled with conversation and joy. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Gabriel took Beatrice back to the spot where they had first sat on the porch together, that evening when she had told him about her past. "Do you remember this night?" he asked. "Every detail," she said. "I was so scared, but you made me feel safe." "You have made every day since then worth living," Gabriel said. He pulled a small box from his pocket. "I wanted to give you something special." Inside the box was a ring, a simple gold band with a single diamond. "When we married, I could not afford much, but I always wanted to give you something beautiful, something that showed the world how much I love you." Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. "Gabriel Irwin, you have given me everything that matters, but this is beautiful, and I will treasure it always." He slipped the ring onto her finger next to her wedding band. Then he kissed her, and it was like the first time all over again, full of promise and love. "Here is to the next 20 years," he said. "And the 20 after that," Beatrice added. They did get those years and many more. As they grew old together, their love only strengthened. Gabriel's hair turned silver and Beatrice's face lined with age, but they still held hands on the porch every evening. They still stole kisses in the kitchen when they thought no one was watching. They still told each other, "I love you," every single day. The ranch passed to Thomas when Gabriel decided he was ready to retire from the hard physical labor. But Gabriel and Beatrice remained in the house, enjoying their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, watching their family grow and thrive. One spring evening, when Gabriel was 72 and Beatrice was 70, they sat on their beloved porch watching the sunset. Gabriel's hand was clasped in Beatrice's, and they were quiet, content in each other's presence. "You know what I was thinking about today?" Beatrice asked. "What?" "That day we met. How lost I felt. How certain I was that I would never be happy again. And then you appeared, like an answer to a prayer I did not know how to say." "You saved me too, you know," Gabriel said. "I did not realize how lonely I was until you filled my life with love." "We saved each other," Beatrice said softly. "That is what love is supposed to do." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn shades of pink and gold. The ranch spread out before them, generations of their family working and living on the land they had built together. "I have no regrets," Beatrice said suddenly. "Not about anything. Every choice I made led me here to you, to this life. Even the hard parts, even the painful parts, they were all worth it." "I feel the same," Gabriel said. "You are my greatest blessing, Beatrice Irwin. You always have been, and you always will be." The sun dipped below the horizon, and the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Around them, the sounds of the ranch settled into evening quiet. A grandchild's laugh drifted from inside the house, and the smell of dinner cooking filled the air. "This is everything I never knew I wanted," Beatrice whispered. "This is home," Gabriel replied, and it was. After all the running, all the fear, all the pain of her past, Beatrice had found her home. Not in a place, but in a person. In the man who had offered her hope when she had none. In the man who had loved her patiently and truly, who had stood beside her through every storm. In the man who had promised to hope enough for both of them, and who had kept that promise every single day. As they sat together watching the stars emerge, Gabriel and Beatrice knew the truth that they had discovered all those years ago. Love, real love, was not about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about choosing each other day after day through joy and sorrow, through triumph and struggle. It was about being brave enough to hope, brave enough to trust, brave enough to believe that happiness was possible. They had been brave, and they had been rewarded with a lifetime of love. The house behind them was full of the family they had created together. The land around them was the legacy they would leave behind. But the greatest thing they had built was not the ranch or the family or the life they had lived. It was the love they shared, constant and true, a love that had transformed them both. Gabriel looked at his wife, still beautiful to him after all these years, and felt his heart swell with gratitude. Beatrice looked back at him with those storm-gray eyes that still held the power to take his breath away, and smiled. "I love you," they said together, as they had said thousands of times before, as they would say thousands of times more. And in that simple declaration, repeated so often it had become as natural as breathing, was the whole truth of their lives. They had found each other when both of them needed finding. They had built something beautiful from broken pieces. They had learned that hope, even when it seemed impossible, was always worth holding on to. They had learned that love could heal, that love could save, that love could make all things new. And they had learned that sometimes, when you are brave enough to accept the hope someone offers you, when you are brave enough to believe in happiness again, miracles happen. Their story was not one of fairy tale perfection. They had faced real struggles and real pain. But they had faced it together, and that had made all the difference. As the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead, Gabriel and Beatrice remained on the porch, hand in hand, heart to heart, living proof that love, true love, endures all things. Years later, long after both Gabriel and Beatrice had passed on peacefully in their sleep within days of each other, their grandchildren and great-grandchildren would tell the story of how they met. They would speak of the scared woman who got off the stagecoach and the kind rancher who offered her hope. They would talk about the love that grew between them, strong and true and lasting. And they would remember the words Gabriel had spoken that changed everything, those simple words that had given Beatrice the courage to stop running and start living. "Then let me hope enough for both of us." Those words became a family legend, passed down through generations. When someone in the family faced hard times, when fear threatened to overwhelm hope, someone would always remember Gabriel's words. They would remember that sometimes we cannot hope for ourselves, but if we are lucky, we find someone who will hope for us until we can hope again. The ranch remained in the family, growing and changing with each generation, but always remaining the Irwin Ranch, built on the foundation of love that Gabriel and Beatrice had laid. Their story became the story the family told to remind themselves of who they were and where they came from. Because in the end, Gabriel and Beatrice's love story was not just their own. It became a legacy, a reminder that love could triumph over fear, that kindness could heal wounds, that hope could change everything. Their names were carved together on a simple headstone in the cemetery overlooking Oroville, just as they had been joined together in life. The inscription read simply, "Together forever. Love endures," and it did endure. In the family they created, in the land they tended, in the story that was told and retold through the years. Their love endured, a testament to the power of hope, the healing of trust, and the miracle that happens when two broken people find each other and choose to be whole together. On quiet evenings, when the sun sets over the California mountains and the stars begin to emerge, some say you can still feel their presence on that porch where they spent so many evenings together. A sense of peace, of love, of coming home. Because the love that Gabriel and Beatrice shared was the kind that transcends time, the kind that leaves an imprint on the world long after the lovers are gone. It was a love built on hope offered and hope accepted, on patience and kindness and unwavering commitment. It was, quite simply, the kind of love that changes everything. And it all began with a scared woman getting off a stagecoach, a kind man offering help, and the simple, powerful decision to hope again, to trust again, to love again. That is the story the family tells. That is the legacy that endures. That is the truth that Gabriel and Beatrice proved with their lives. Love, when it is real, when it is true, when it is built on hope and trust and commitment, can overcome anything. Their story ended as all stories must, but the love they shared, the family they built, the hope they embodied continues on, generation after generation, a living testament to the power of choosing love over fear, hope over despair, together over alone. Gabriel and Beatrice's love story was not just a romance. It was a revolution of the heart, a redemption of the soul, a resurrection of hope. And in a wild and often harsh world, in a time and place where survival was never guaranteed, they created something soft and beautiful and enduring. They created a love that would outlast them both, a love that would inspire their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a love that proved what is possible when two people are brave enough to hope. That is their legacy. That is their gift to the world. That is the truth they lived every single day from the moment they met until the moment they drew their last breaths, still side by side, still together, still in love. And that is why their story matters. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Not because it was easy, but because they chose it every day through every challenge. not because they never struggled, but because they struggled together and came out stronger on the other side. Gabriel and Beatrice Irwin built a life on hope, and that life became a legacy of love that time could not diminish and distance could not fade. They proved that no matter how broken we might be, no matter how scared, no matter how lost, there is always hope. And sometimes, if we are very lucky, there is someone willing to hope for us until we can hope for ourselves. That is the gift Gabriel gave Beatrice. That is the gift she gave back to him. That is the gift they both gave to everyone who knew them and everyone who would come after, the gift of hope. The gift of love, the gift of home, and in the end, what more could anyone ask for?